So, Jill Huckins, she's been with the city for quite a while. And I can't tell you enough about how important our cemetery division is. And you're going to find out even more about how kind and considerate they are. All of us at one time or another may have to visit that place, or some of them, but the cemeteries, I think we have 9 cemeteries, but she'll correct me.
13.
13 cemeteries. And I bet we'll get a little information about that. But Jill, go for it.
Okay.
I know you can handle
All right. Okay, well, hello, and thank you guys for all coming out tonight. Like I was introduced, I'm Jill Huckins. I've been the cemetery administrator for 17 years, and I've worked for the city for about 24 years. I started with the state for the first 18 years of my career, and then came over to the city. So I have a lot of experience with a lot of different things, but definitely this is where I'm supposed to be, as the cemetery department. I want to start off with reading this poem. A cemetery is a history of people, a perpetual record of yesterday, and a sanctuary of peace and quiet today. A cemetery exists because every life is worth loving and remembering always. And I truly mean that from my heart. That's exactly how I feel. We have 13 cemeteries in Concord and Pennacook. This is just a list of what we have. 3 of the cemeteries that are in Blossom Hill are 3 separate cemeteries. So if you have anyone that's buried in any of these cemeteries, I have the records for them. So please feel free to check with us, and I would be able to set you right up with that. Our annual interments, burials that we have each year, fiscal year 2022, we had 249 interments. Most of them, as you can see, are cremation burials, and 72 are full-size casket burials. This past year, we're a little bit under, 245 interments, and the majority, again, are cremation. We also sell lots, of course. Lot sales, fiscal year 2022, we sold 91 lots. 12 of them were cremation lots and lots of 2, and 93 were full-size casket grave lots. And in last fiscal year, 109, so we're up a little with selling. Most of them, again, were the casket burial lots. If you can see this.
Do you want us to ask questions as you go along? Or?
Sure.
Because feel free to ask questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Stop me at any time. Back in 1862, to buy a 1-grave casket lot was $1.60. As it goes through the years, it goes up a little bit. 1887 up to $6, 1988 up to $360, 2009 $915, and today if you bought a 1-grave lot, it's $975.
Talk about inflation.
We have a staff of 6 gentlemen in the winter and 8 gentlemen in the summertime. We have 2 shared positions that we share with the highway department. These are 4 of our long-timers. We do all of the maintenance in the cemeteries. We do all the mowing, trimming, raking, pruning, garbage, you name it, we do it. And with 8 employees in the summer, with 13 cemeteries, just to do the mowing, if we had no burials, so just our staff concentrated just on the mowing, it takes 2.5 weeks from start to finish. So they are constantly out there working. When we do have burials, our mowing crew comes off their mowing and we do the burials. And just imagine raking around every single stone and every single shrub, pulling out the leaves. It's a very tedious job. So I'm sure a lot of you have done genealogy. And people come to us all the time. And this is a specific type of request. Someone will come in and say, I'm looking for my grandmother. So the first thing I ask, of course, is, what's your grandmother's name? And they'll give the last name. And I go, and her first name? Well, I don't know. It's Grammy. So a lot of times it's a little challenging. So this particular person was asking about their grandmother, Helen Stewart. And they tell me she died sometime between 1932 and 1936. So the search begins. I found a record for Helen Augusta Stewart, and she died in 1935. On here it tells the section that she's buried in and the lot number. So from that, I go to the lot card, and there's 3 other people buried with her. So when you're doing a search, you get a copy of the lot card, the lot layout, who's there, and then a copy of everyone on the lot card's interment card. And that gives a lot of information. You get a copy of the map to show you where on this particular block your family member is in. And if I do have the information, we sometimes have a funeral record. And then you get a map of the entire cemetery to show you where that block is that your family member is in. So that's, to me...
Is there a fee for that?
No, there is not. Nope. To me, that's an easy search. I can do it in a minute or 2. But then becomes the older searches. And you thought 1930s was old? That's practically yesterday. So what we do is we use funeral home records to help us update and create interment records. So everyone who's buried in our cemetery has an interment card. It tells when they died, when they were buried, possibly who their parents are, the section that they're buried in, who they were married to, their age, when they were born. But a lot of times we don't have that information. So Waters Funeral Home records, I have had access to 11,560 funeral records from 1889 to 1985. And I had volunteers come in and make copies of the Waters Funeral Home old ledgers, page by page, and we have them in a file now. So when someone calls and they're looking for something, I can even give them a copy of the funeral record. So this is Waters Funeral Home basement. This is how it all started. I used to go over there and sit down with the shag carpet and the old couches and look through these ledgers page by page, looking for information of people that are buried in our cemetery that I didn't have records of. And I wanted to know why I didn't have these records. So, and I'll talk about that in a second. So we have Waters Funeral Home records. They did 99% of the Catholic burials. And then Wendell Butt Funeral Home, which went out of business probably almost 2 years ago now. I went to school with the gentleman who ran it up until it went, when they sold the business. And for years and years, I used to say to him, what do you have for records? What's in the basement? I need to look at these. And it just never was the right time. So when he called me to tell me he was retiring, instead of saying, well, that's great, good for you, I said, what about the records? When am I going to get them? So he said, when do you want them? And I said, are you there now? So my staff and I went over to Pennacook, and we have over 18,300 funeral records that we got from that information. All of these funeral homes a lot of them were in Pennacook. And when those little funeral homes would go out of business, they gave their records to Wendell Butt Funeral Home. So when I got records, I got from 1889 right down to probably 1983. And those came in all kinds of different ways. These are a couple of the file cabinets. We probably had 6 to 8 file cabinets full. They had been in a fire. A lot of the information was singed on the top, but I have 4 volunteers that I will show that information in a minute. But we had to go through all of these file cabinets, all of these old ledgers and things like that, and we stored them in our chapel. So it's just a couple more photos of them. These are the files. Every funeral had a file from probably the 1940s to current. Before that, they were in ledgers, which I'll show you in a minute. These are my volunteers. This is Nancy. This is Barbara. This is Deborah, Ginny, and Stephanie. So they're not just my volunteers, they're great friends, and they're very like-minded like us. So they have helped us tremendously. I'm going to have, excuse me, I should have introduced Michelle. Michelle is my new assistant. I've been asking for over 15 years for an assistant, so I have finally got one. So this is a 1919 ledger of all the funerals that have happened. So what we do is we take these pages, page by page, and we go through them, and our volunteers add any information to them that we can find on Ancestry. And then we go to our card file, and a lot of them, we don't even have them, but they clearly say here they're buried in Blossom Hill or Concord Calvary, sometimes even give a lot number. So we are filling in so much information, thousands and thousands of records we're fixing. That's on the large size, and then we have ledger books that are as small as this. So we took everything that we could. I was literally on my hands and knees in the basement, a dirty basement, but I didn't care, going through wet cardboard and looking in all the corners, and found a lot of the little books that were kind of tucked in here and there. So it was like a treasure hunt and Christmas all rolled in together. This is what one of the funeral records look like from Waters Funeral Home. And this is Agnes Pendergrast. So there's a lot of information on here. It will show their name, the funeral date, what type of casket they were buried in, what kind of vault they had, who their parents were, their exact age if they have that. And then there's also a little spot here that tells the lot information, and they're buried on the north side of that lot. So all this information is just priceless for us to update our cards, because this is what our card looks like. So we have Agnes. She died sometime around 1920, and she was 37. That's all we have. But we're able to add all of this. The date she was buried, the date she died. We didn't even know what date she died. Her exact age, that she was a patient at the New Hampshire Hospital, Waters Funeral Home, of course, and who her parents were. So she was not married, because, of course, her maiden name was Pendergrast. So we're able to fill in this blank, so when someone comes to find the Pendergrast family, we're going to be able to show them what we have. This is Anna, from the same family, same thing. We didn't have hardly any information on her, and now we have all the information. And this is just another picture. This is from some of the books. There's books that are in between those two sizes. It'll say here Blossom Hill. It will tell what the occupation of this man was. He was a farmer. He was 70 years, 8 months, and 21 days. He was white. He was a male. And it gives all of his information. And again, we didn't have a lot of information here. We had when he died and his approximate age. So we're able to update all of our records with much more detailed information. And this is just another example to show the same thing. This didn't even have a death date or a burial date or an age. And we were able to get all this information so that when someone comes looking for Mary Alice Sargent, she's going to find her. Yes?
As you're doing this, is this all remaining just on paper, or is it going into a computer? Or?
Yep, we have a in-house cemetery database. I've been trying to get a real cemetery database to help us so that we wouldn't have to make the photocopies and give them to the people, that they'd be able to go in and click on this and get all this information. I think it's in the budget. Maybe it keeps getting pushed back, maybe a couple of years. So I'm very excited to get that program. It's going to be helpful for the community as well as us once we get the information in there. That'll be free, for anybody to look at. So when we were going through the folders, we found this necklace and it was in a small little envelope. It was beautiful. The picture does not do it justice, but it was beautiful. So one of my volunteers who does Ancestry, she looked up the person who her children were. They were all deceased. So we found, her sister's children, because this lady didn't have any children. So we were able to find a third great niece in, I think it was New York. And we got her phone number and I cold called her. Well, just imagine, they're probably like, oh, are you a prince and we give you this much money and then we'll give you that. So she didn't call back for like a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, I didn't know what to do. So I said, well, maybe I'll write a letter on, letterhead, and so she'll believe us. And she was on vacation, so she called back. She was so excited to know that this existed, and then we were able to send that to her. She wore her grandmother's wedding ring every day, and now she's gonna have her grandmother's sister's necklace. So it was just, I think I was as emotional as she was when we were able to reunite her with that. And this is who it was. It was Amanda Mary Lane. So that was just a copy of her records. And this is her, so if anyone were to come and ask us, and I did send this to her of where her and another, I can't see it from here, but another Mary, thank you, is buried. So as we are, yes?
Sorry, I got
No.
You probably don't know the answer to this question, but why do you think that necklace was in a record versus in a casket?
Yes. We have found a few things, and this lady, her cremation was sent somewhere. So she wasn't buried anywhere local. So, and that's what we found with a lot of things. And the necklace was maybe left behind. And in the notes sometimes it says family will pick up jewelry. And they probably just never did. They never had the opportunity or something. And that's probably why. We had a couple of small little envelopes with, one had a $5 bill in it, and it was supposed to be at the church, put in the collection plate. So I looked back in the records of the church, and it was a church in Andover, and I sent them the $5 because that's where it was supposed to go. We just returned a wedding band to the granddaughter of another lady from Pennacook. So I knew the family, but I didn't know her, but I did meet her, and she came and she got the wedding band. So we found some neat little things, and we do our best to get them where they're supposed to go. So we're creating interment records all the time. The Waters Funeral Home records that I showed you, we have created new records, over 1,200, that weren't even recorded in the cemetery. So people would come to me and say, I used to come here with my grandmother when I was 5 years old, and I remember going over by the wall, and there was a rock, and my grandmother would pray. And so she knew from back then that her grandmother's child was there, and I would look in my records and I didn't find them. So that's how I got into looking at the Waters Funeral Home records, and found that there were a lot of people that we didn't have records of. So that's why we made the copies, and we have them, and we go through them, our volunteers do. So the majority of the unrecorded burials were the infants, and the infants were buried along the wall. I didn't know what it meant at the time when they said, well, I knew what it meant. I didn't understand it, that the babies weren't buried in the cemetery because they died before they were baptized. So I got quite the education to think, so they were on the outskirts of the cemetery. So people that lost their child knew where they were, but they were never written down. So now we have at least 1,200 and making more every day of these little babies as well as adults that now will be recorded as they should have been. This represents all the babies that were buried along the wall. A little story about this, the top part, this piece right here and up, it's a little baby sleeping on a pillow. And when I started 17 years ago and knew no one in my department, mostly the gentlemen that had been there forever, I wanted to see every nook and cranny. I wanted to see where everything was. So we went into the chapel, we went down cellar, and I looked under the staircase, and there was this beautiful white marble sleeping baby. And I'm like, well, what is that? And they had been working there 30, 40 years, and they said, I don't know, it's always been there. And I said, well, get it out. And they said, well, it's like 600 pounds. And I go, then get two people, because it's not staying down there. So they brought it up the back stairs of the chapel, and they said, what do you want us to do with it? And I didn't know. I said, bring it to the office. So I had it in the office with me for a while, right around the time I was discovering all these babies, and then thought this would be the perfect place for this to represent all of our babies that are out there along the wall. So Star Granite, when it was in existence in Concord, the monument company, they donated that and did the engraving, and we had a service and had a blessing of the ground where all the babies lay. And that was in 2011.
Well done.
Thank you. This is the other section that's over by the wall. The baby is over here. This is like a common ground section, and that was in Concord Calvary, excuse me, the baby. This is Concord Calvary as well, along the wall. And these were people who maybe suicide, or they weren't, lack of a better word, not my word, weren't worthy of being in the cemetery. So that was, again, just outside. It's now part of the whole cemetery, and we treat every part of it the same, but that's just how it was back then. So we also have a common ground in Blossom Hill, and it's only 145 feet by 78 feet, and it has 686 burials. They started in 1896, and they went through to about 1950. This section, when the gentlemen were putting the grade stakes out for plowing, which they've done every year forever, they came down, when I started working there, they came down on a solid piece, and they started to dig around, and they found a white marble marker. So when I found out, I, of course, had to get involved and go out there, and as they probed, there was another marble marker and another marble marker, and the whole front row of this section, of the common ground section, had white marble markers. So it was almost winter, so we had to wait till spring. Well, in the spring, we had a big project. So from this area right here forward, there were, there's 686 burials with not many markers at all. So I had two of my summer people. We went out and measured and found pins for the 686 burials that were there. I found an old ledger that told the names of everyone who was there. So we put all that together, and I created a map, and we know right to the inch where everybody is. So we pulled up the first row of white marble markers, which is about right here, and put a foundation under them all. And then we probed and found maybe 13 more scattered around this area. So to me, that wasn't enough. So I started a program called the Adopt a Grave program. And for $100, you could adopt an adult or an infant, and we would put a 6-inch by 12-inch granite marker with that infant or adult's name and the date. A lot of the infants had the born and death date of the same day, and we would put the marker out there, and I would give a certificate, and this is the little boy that I adopted, Charles Canine, and he was born and died on my birthday many years before me, but that was my connection. And people would come in, and people bought Christmas presents as adopted graves for their grandchildren, and some people did more research. But what I would do is I would go through the annual reports and get a copy of the birth and death record of each of the people who they were adopting, and this is what the marker would look like. And it was granite. And then we had 11 unknown adults and 11 unknown infants. And there was no way that I was going to have unknown on any stone out there, because that baby and that person is not unknown. They may be unknown to us, but they're not unknown. So I let the people decide what they wanted to put on these markers of specifically the infants. Once forgotten, now remembered, baby girl. My dad adopted one that said God gave this infant a name. And so this is how each row started. So all of the adults were adopted, and we were down to just 200 babies left. And we were able to access our trust money that was created for this section back in the 1800s. Come to find out, that is what the office was doing back in 1901. They were starting to have markers made for these unknowns, and I'm not sure what happened after that first row, but I'm happy to say that I have just now turned in the last 200, and they'll be created, and my staff will be very busy this spring, but we will have a marker for 686 adults and infants that are buried in that section. So, finding homes for unclaimed remains. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. We had received from a local funeral home unclaimed remains. After so many, but there's a law that after so much time, the funeral home can legally dispose of the cremated remains. But I don't really know of many funeral homes that would dispose of them. So I'm always saying, if you have any, bring them to us and we'll take care of them. Well, these unclaimed cremated remains dated back to, I think, the 1940s. So the time frame was off a bit, but there was a lot of turnaround in the funeral homes at the time. And so we received 78. And that was a bit overwhelming, but I was up for the task. So Michelle and my volunteers and myself have gone through and done extensive research to see if we can find a person who was supposed to have received these cremated remains. We have found 14 so far we were able to bury in Concord that had a note in the file or something that said to be buried with husband or to be scattered in Blossom Hill. And just for some reason, not to point fingers at anyone, but for some reason those wishes weren't fulfilled. So we've done 14 service of farewell burials, 6 are pending, 8, the records have gone to the Veterans Cemetery in Bosquen, and they're going to make sure that they have all the proper information, and those 8 individuals will be buried at the Bosquen Veterans Cemetery. 18 are confirmed that they do not have a location that they specifically need to go. 6 we've given to surrounding towns. We've had our volunteers have actually driven them to the different towns and met with the cemetery keepers there. And 26 are left to research. So in the spring we'll be doing a burial. We have a vault that the funeral home has given to us that we will put the individuals in. We have names for all of them. We had a gentleman come and pick up, a gentleman in his 90s. He came and picked up his mother's cremation, and for almost 30 years he's been going to her grave thinking she was buried there. So he was like, what? And so he came, he was very understanding, he was very happy. They had a service for her in that cemetery outside of Concord. So things happen. So we can't go backwards, so I'm just trying to make it right going forward. And it's a good feeling to when we bury these individuals. So we have scattering ledges up behind the cemetery. You walk up around the side here, and usually we, the staff, do the scattering. It's at no cost, so if anybody wants to be scattered at the scattering ledges, we don't charge. And they're just scattered down over the ledges. Service of farewell, that's what we did for the 14 that we buried in Concord. And what it involves is a very short, simple service, and it used to, when I first started working, it was called a drop-in. So the funeral home would say, I got a drop-in for you. And I used to think, drop-in? Just because these people don't have a family and they're not going to have a service? So I immediately changed it to service of farewell. And Reverend Terry Odell has guided me and taught me the proper way to remember these people. So we have a service of farewell for anyone who doesn't have any family. Sometimes it's prisoners from the state prison. Other times it's the husband of a wife, and she was the only person that was left, that he had left, and she'd already died. So whatever the reason, we do a service of farewell. We always put a rose in their grave. We thank them for what they did for the world. We're sorry for any suffering, and we sprinkle sacred stars to bless and light their journey. So this was done for those 14, but I've also done close to 100 service of farewells in my time at the cemetery. United States veterans buried in Concord. Get my notes on this one. We have over 5,000 veterans buried in our cemeteries in Concord and Pennacook. And as we all know, Memorial Day is a very big day for cemeteries, and I call it our Christmas because it's an exciting time. Lots of people come. I've made such great friends, and they come every year. And it's just a wonderful time to remember our veterans. So we prepare the graves of 555 people that have flower trusts. And how am I doing on time? I don't want to...
Fine.
Okay.
You on board yet?
Please, don't fall asleep.
That's our measure.
So we have 555 flower beds that we plant. My staff plants. I don't plant them. It involves 7,400 individual plants. Those flowers and plants are strategically placed on the specific graves in a special way. The 4 red geraniums, and then these little purple flowers, and these leafy things, and some marigolds, and it's all down to a science. And people pay for this, and it's a perpetual flower trust that they get flowers on their family's grave forever. So when we prepare for Memorial Day, we have to make sure everything's mowed, trimmed, and we're just barely getting out of snow weather. So it's a big crunch time. Everybody works real hard, but it always looks beautiful. So also we have military volunteers that come, and they place American flags on all of the veterans' graves. And we supply them with an updated list every year. Michelle is a big part of that list this year, getting it all together and the maps, and we give them as much information as we can so that they can place the flags. And we always have flags in the office. We're open that whole weekend. So we're open Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of Memorial Day, every weekend. When I first started working, I said to my boss, so what hours do I work this coming weekend? And he's like, it's a holiday, you have it off. And I go, no, people need me. And they did. People come in, they come once a year, we take one tree down, and they're lost. So it's a pleasure to work there. This will be Michelle's first year. So she'll get to see all the excitement that we have for Memorial Day. Also with the veterans, we have... This is some of our flowers that we put out, and these are the flags. And we also have wreaths across America. So we have 7 cemeteries that participate in the wreaths across America. It started in Blossom Hill and Concord Calvary, and then other people came forward and wanted to coordinate with the other cemeteries. So the Civil Air Patrol takes care of Blossom Hill and Concord Calvary. Old North is the Pierce Brigade. Old Fort is the Daughters of the American Revolution. Horse Hill is a lady who lives on Runnels Road, right beside Horse Hill Cemetery, Pat Cutting. Woodlawn is Doug Jones from Pennacook. And Maple Grove is Jim Spain and the Rotary Club. And this year we had 28 wreaths for Old Fort, and that takes care of all the veterans in the Old Fort Cemetery. We had 50 for Maple Grove, 214 for Old North, which all the veterans in Old North got remembered, and over 1,700 came to Blossom Hill. So we have, this truck comes in and it's pretty impressive when they deliver all of the wreaths. We place them in our holding tomb, and then the companies that do the different cemeteries come that Friday, get all of the wreaths, and then Saturday is the ceremony each year. So this is us unloading the trucks. This is my staff that year. We do have a good time. This is Old Fort. This is Maple Grove. This is Old North. And they even have like the gentleman dress in the era. And this is Blossom Hill this past year, where we had to, there were so many packed in each box that the bows were flat, and I didn't want them to be flat. So we took them all out with the help of all the volunteers and fluffed up every bow and put them on the trucks, and then everybody went around and we placed them.
Where is Old Fort Cemetery?
Old Fort is it Shawmut Street? I don't remember what that school is.
Oh,
The east side.
over East Concord.
Yes, yes. Yep, right across the street from there. This is a young girl and her grandmother helping us. And these are some of the cadets from the Civil Air Patrol. And this was a young boy with his dad and his brother. And he was trying to fix the flag. It was really cute. So this is what they looked like. So they would go around, and if there was American flag or they saw the flat marker, they would put a wreath out. We have an Old North preservation team. We started in 2016. It's 2 retired gentlemen, and they fix the monuments in Old North. So these 2 were broken in half, and what they do is we dig all around, we take out the monuments and the bases, and we have a mixture of pea stone, and you don't set them in cement. There's like a particular way that we do this, and we've all been trained on it. And then we have these certain types of epoxy, depending on whether it's marble or granite or slate. So these 2 were ones that were fixed. This is taking one out. Right here, that's how deep those go. You'll always see those little slate monuments. Oh, that's so cute. But sometimes it's up to 4 feet down into the ground, and they're leaning. And the ones that have already fallen over here and broke, we can fix those one day, but the ones that are leaning are going to do that. So we have concentrated on the leaning stones first. We have repaired and uprighted over 600 stones in Old North. So they work very hard. They work every summer, and they do a wonderful job, and it's very near and dear to their hearts. And there's the pea stone and the sand, and it's all a special mixture. It all has to be packed just right, and we're hoping it'll stay up another 200 years before it starts to go again. We measure, we make sure it gets back exactly where it was. We document it with the date that it was fixed. And then cemetery walking tours. So I do a walking tour, walking and talking. As you know, I like my talking, for Old North Cemetery. So it's usually through the library, but we are going to have one through the OLLI program coming up in June, I think. And then we had them in Blossom Hill. I really enjoy doing them. It's a lot of nice, neat stories about the people who have lived in where we are years before us, and they all have a story to tell. So this is one of the walking tours in the Minot enclosure in Old North. And this was starting at the library, and we would start at the library and we'd walk and talk all the way down to Old North, and then I would explain the stories to everyone. And we have a chapel at the Blossom Hill. If you haven't seen it, you can really see it at night when you go by. We have the windows lit up at night so you can see how beautiful the lights are. It's the Clara B. Perkins Chapel. Clara's daughter had the chapel made in honor of her mother, and it was built about the same time that the office was closed in as an actual building, and she had it so that people could have funerals in there, and it was built in 1904. And through the years, it's gone into disrepair, and it's been fixed up again, and then disrepair and fixed up again. So I think the fourth time that I'm aware of, I was involved in, and we had this pathway put in. We had outside lights. We had a light put up above, because we would have services in there in the evening, and once you turn those lights out, it is dark there. So inside, we had the whole inside painted and the walls fixed, and we had the roof fixed. We had, you can't see it in this picture, but on either side up at the altar were replica gas lanterns that were electric. We had a big, like a pot belly stove down in the basement. That's how we heated the facility. It would take us 3 days in the winter to heat it if we were going to have a funeral in there. So, and a lot of smoke. So when we were going to go through all this, we decided that we would put in some gas. And we couldn't have got the stove out if we wanted to, because apparently it was put in there, then it was built, the building. So it's down in the basement. So now it's a nice clean heat. We can heat it up in a matter of an hour. We have weddings as well as funerals in there. We just had a wedding a couple of weeks ago. A beautiful young bride, and her dad walked from our office up to the chapel. They had about 60 people, and it was just beautiful. And the funerals, we allow people to have their gathering in there and then go to the graveside if they would like to. And then it also can be rented. So it's $100 an hour during the week, and it's $125 an hour during the weekend. And the only downfall is there is no bathroom in the chapel. But there used to be one gentleman, that was his job. He sat in the basement and fed that wood stove. So I'm thinking there must have been some type of place down there, because that would be a long day. I'm sorry, these are the replica gas lanterns. We could see where the gas pipe had come through the wall there. So it's a working organ. And that is it. So are there any questions for me? Thank you. Okay.
I have a million questions, but
I figured I talk so much, I'm probably not even leaving room for questions.
Knocked me out of my questions, but I was going to ask about the chapel, but you explained that very well. Where is Krista McAuliffe carried?
Krista McAuliffe is in Concord Calvary, and if you come in the archway entrance and go straight up, you'll come right up there. She's got a beautiful big black granite stone. She sits up on a knoll right on the corner there. So, yep. And school kids still come.
there's always apples.
Yes, there is, and pencils, and every so often we clean it off. But yeah, the buses still come through, And I know for years, especially when I first started, we'd go collect all the change off it. And the family used to pick it up, but now they tell us if there's any change to donate it, to one of the local banks or if they're doing a food drive or something like that. So yeah.
That's kind of a unique spot up there. I have
It
seen
is.
that.
It is. Yep.
What is your favorite anything in any of the cemeteries? Like, what is the one thing that you're like, this is it for me?
The
This is
babies.
yeah.
The babies, the unmarked baby graves, and the unrecognized at the time babies. I just feel such a connection to all of them, and I feel like I'm their mother. I'm not able to be a mother, so it just makes perfect sense that this is why I'm here and to take care of all of them. And we have a picture in our office that, I don't know what size that is. It's like this big. It's a big picture. And it was found outside against a stone in an old section from, the mid 1800s. And nobody ever goes to those sections. But it's a picture of a woman who's laying across a bed, and cherub angels are all around her. And it's kind of got the cloudy part of it. And I think that was put there for me. And I feel like that's me with all the little babies.
Where is that baby monument in Boston?
It's in Concord Calvary. So the wall that runs along Call Street and the prison is right, so right along that wall.
Okay.
So it's more closer to the back of the cemetery. And in that section where the babies are is a pretty small section. And there's at least 600, 700, 800 babies there. But what happened was it was a bigger section at the time. And then as time went on, the people needed more space in that cemetery. So they filled it up and then sold graves over where the babies were. And when I first found that out, when I found the records, I'm like, oh my God, I just couldn't believe it. Who would do that? And then my Reverend Terry Odell friend said, no, that isn't it. They're there to protect the babies. They're there to watch over them. And I thought, okay, I'm fine. Because it really bothered me. But now that's why it happened. So everything happens for a reason, and they're all watched over there and taken care of.
Do you have some unique stones, gravestones and things? For example, I think there's a World War I soldier who originally had a gun and everything.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So, and the gun has been broken off. It is, I believe it's a World War I. Jim Spain will correct me if I'm wrong, because I think he knows exactly what the uniform is for him. But the man is like holding a gun, and from the gun on is gone.
Yeah.
And for years we tried finding out where these pieces were. We didn't have them. We heard that this gentleman that used to work there, he has them, and then he passed on, and we checked with his son, is it in the garage? And we just couldn't find them. Well, 2 summers ago, actually 2 winters ago, I was out for a little while, and when I came back, they were cleaning up the shop area, like way down underneath, and they found the pieces to the gun. So I'm in the process of trying to find a monument company that will give us some guidance on how to, because we don't have all the pieces, but to put that back together in a way that it's not going to, be slapped or bumped into and broke again. So we do have the pieces, and we plan to get that back put together. So we have monument. That's a very unique monument.
I know somebody in that family who would be willing to perhaps pay for something original.
Is it, okay, I'll ask you if it's who I think it might be, because they've asked about it before and I haven't reached back out to them, so they don't know we found the pieces.
He's going to be thrilled.
Good. I just haven't had the chance to reach out to him, so that will be great.
But you've got some others, I bet.
We do. We have some that are pretty unique. They look like a log, like a stump. We have quite a few of those. Nowadays, we have a lot of monuments that have pictures on them of people. Up towards the back where the newer sections are, there's, husband and wife in an actual picture. And, it's a little different, but because I can remember years and years and years ago when I was young, we would drive through because there was a picture of a lady on a stone in there in her coffin. And that was like, everyone knew that. Everybody went and saw that. And then I wanted to see it once I got this job, and it had been taken off many years ago. I think some kids defaced it, and so it had to be removed. But
Do you run into any problems with different religious communities having their own style of burial?
Yes.
And then, like when you say Calvary, my understanding that's a Catholic cemetery.
It's Concord Calvary is the Catholic cemetery. It was owned by the diocese, but in the 1980s they sold it or gave it to the city. So it's treated just like all the other cemeteries. We don't require anything special or not in there. It's the same as all of our other ones. But we do have Beth Jacob, which is a Jewish cemetery within Blossom Hill. And I'm learning a lot about their beliefs and what they would like us to not touch when we think we're helping. So I'm learning a lot, and we're very respectful of what they would like us to do and not do. And I work very closely with the rabbi over there.
There's also a Quaker section in the old law cemetery.
There is. And in the Quaker section, the Quakers do not like their own stones. They don't want to bring attention to themselves, even in death. So there used to be stones there. And then I don't know the year, but possibly in the early 1900s, all the stones were taken off. And there was only one stone left there. And then there's, I think, 2 individual stones that have been put there in the past.
You must be finding things in your garages and old sheds with, where did those go, for example?
Right, and we never did find those. I think the Quakers took those back to whatever, but we have a lot of unhomed markers, a lot of, they were replaced, and it takes a lot of research to find out who this person was because their name is wrong, and then we have to do research we don't have that person, and then we found out, it's instead of Andrews, it's Anderson. So we try to find homes for everything that we have there. So in the different communities that are living in Concord now have their own thoughts of what they would like a burial to be like. And I've learned a lot with the different communities and the way that they handle their burials, and they believe they would like their people to be like right on the ground, but the City of Concord requires a vault. So all caskets get put into a vault, but we do allow them to be inverted, so the body can go and the vault can go over. So the ground is still protected by the vault, but they are with the earth the way that they would like to be. So we're very accommodating as much as we can be.
I think that's a Muslim tradition.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
I think one of the earlier slides, I thought I read where it showed that most of the last couple of years, the number of cremation versus caskets was majority were cremation.
Yes.
But then the other one I showed like the recent sales were kind of the opposite.
Yes.
And is there a trend changing?
Because people buy a full-size casket burial lot for cremations.
Oh.
For, F-O-R, for, F-O-U-R. So four cremations go in that one grave, but you can't have an upright headstone on a 2-grave cremation lot. You have to buy at least a 1-grave lot because the cremation lot's too small for a headstone. So people buy the full-size casket lots for much of their family to have 1 casket and up to 4 cremations in that 1 grave. So that's why that's up.
You don't know what their intention is until maybe later.
Right, and a lot of times, there's a lot of conversation when they buy a lot. I make sure they know what they can do, what they need to tell their family, what they need to designate someone upon their passing to be the owner. Otherwise, it gets a little interesting when the middle child comes in and says, we haven't seen my brother in 10 years, and he's older, so he really is the owner, if nobody's told us any different. So it caused a lot of problems with families, because sometimes the middle child is the responsible one, and the older one is far away.
Ain't that the truth?
I'm the middle child.
Do you have anything to do with the New Hampshire Hospital Cemetery?
Yes, I was on a committee for a few years. They reached out to me to try to get their records together and figure out the best way to repair their stones and record everything. So I was on a committee with quite a few people from Concord, and we did a lot of ground penetrating radar in the different areas from the old records. There's two on Clinton Street. There's one on the right and one on the left, Meadow 1 and Meadow 2. But there was a lot of old records that said the burial beside the gazebo by such and such building. So we did an overlay of what is there now so we could find the area, and did some ground penetrating radar to see there were a lot more little burial spots here and there through that area. And then I think new management came in, and the group was kind of dissolved. So I know that they're working on getting their monuments fixed up. And also I got copies of at least from Meadow 1 and Meadow 2 of who's buried there. And I found a lot of New Hampshire State Hospital records in the funeral home records that I have that might help them, as well as, fill in some blanks for a lot of people to find their loved ones. So, yes.
2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of budget does the city give you per year? And second, in all your searching, have you ever found the origin of that marble baby sculpture?
To answer that question first, no. There was a lot of rumor. They said that they were told that baby monument was put on the next available baby grave when they would bury the babies, one right after another. But it was so white and so beautiful, I don't think it had ever been outside. So I don't believe that that's the case. And the budget, we were under the City of Concord, Parks and Recreation. So we have, just like probably any other department's budget, it's not a lot. And I
Not as much as we wanted to.
exactly, everybody wants their budget larger. I have things I want to do, so.
Do you take donations?
We did for the Adopt-A-Grave. Anybody that would donate anything, we told them about that program, and that's what they did. I know that we're looking to have some type of a fundraiser. We had a beautiful white cedar tree that won an award for New England's biggest tree, and then it declined rapidly, and we had to have it cut down. But I had the tree crew for the City of Concord is wonderful. That group is they are so great to us. But they found a place that milled it or made boards so we can make benches out of that beautiful tree. And then we want to build some. We have the wood. We want to build them, and then almost have a raffle for people to donate, and then put that money towards a project that we see would be fit. So,
Good idea.
yeah.
It's
How
very
about
easy, it's very easy in the city to do a Friends kind of,
Oops.
Mhm.
that would be a partnering nonprofit organization to any one of our city parks, like we have the Friends of White Park, we have the Friends of Keach Park. So when it comes to the Parks Department, because the cemetery is under Parks and Recreation, it's very easy for a collective of individuals to decide they want to assist Jill on projects like this.
they can do.
Yes.
Good.
Not that I'm asking
But yeah,
experience
yeah.
or anything, but there are other departments in the city that you can't do a nonprofit for.
You cannot?
No.
Okay,
We're not
but-
gonna do,
but we
a
could.
nonprofit to do paving of the roads.
Oh, come on now.
I also heard you speak of a trust, that you had trust money to do something.
Yes.
And have you other trusts?
Yes, we have a lot of trust. When I first,
For the maintenance of the,
yep, we have a perpetual care trust,
Yeah.
which is 70% of every lot sale goes into perpetual care, so we can mow, trim, and maintain the lot. And that's invested, and the money earned off the investments we can use to offset the payroll for our staff doing work out on the graves itself. We have individual trusts that we put a bouquet of flowers out every July 3rd for someone's birthday. We have about 18 of those different trusts. And then we have a trust for every cemetery, and then specific beautification trusts that I found a lot of information on.
pretty neat.
Yeah. But you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if there were a lot of family plots that still had, say 3 out of 4 were taken, or
Yes.
how often does that happen? I mean,
Yeah,
good percentage, or?
even now, people, family members will come in and want to be buried with their grandparents or even their great-grandparents. And you just have to prove who you are in that line, and it's more or less, okay, here's your great-grandfather, how many children did he have? Who did they have for children? Who did they have for children? And then who's the oldest in this living generation? And then we have an indemnity letter that they sign, stating that they are, and then we allow additional burials within those graves. But if we have a 4-grave lot, and there's only 2 graves, and there's 2 graves vacant, and they've been vacant, for 100 years, the law in New Hampshire is after 50 years of no activity, the city has the right to take those 2 graves, separate them, and resell them. But activity means one person coming for 2 seconds and putting a flower, that's activity. And we could never really prove if there's any activity because we have so many sites. So someone maybe in the future in this position may want to do that, but I have no interest at all in that.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were showing, like when I first came in, that, with the cremations,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was immediately thinking that there must be quite a few spaces, but how do you stop the middle child from jumping over the oldest child?
Well, the middle child can come in and say, I am the oldest. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't ask for ID or birth certificate or anything, but you sign this. And then when the older child comes in and says, that's my sister and she lied, and it does happen, then we say, well, you're going to have to go to probate court and let the court settle it.
And what happens at that point?
They never go to court.
Okay.
And the middle child then says, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was still alive or something. They make up something. So, but a 2-grave lot that the great-grandparents bought for 2 caskets that many years ago now can have 8 cremations on there, 4 in each. Yeah. So it's really saving on space, and you've got your family together.
Wow, this has been fantastic, I think. And I've been looking forward to it, and it was everything I wanted it to be. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well, to remind you all, this is the 2nd Thursday of the month, and each 2nd Thursday we have a program. And the program for next month, I'll tell you right now, let me ask you a history question. Has anybody ever heard of Prescott, Oregon? I know you have. Prescott organs were built in New Hampshire, in Concord, in 1856, I think, and sold, I think, around the world. And some were Prescott pianos, and then there were organs, and perhaps other things. So, the Concord Historical Society had the good fortune of being given a working Prescott organ. It's over in the Kimball Jenkins house. And our goal at the moment is that I've been talking with R.P. Hale. You know R.P.? No. R.P. is a local organ player and dulcimer maker and player and so forth. And he has agreed to play it. So next month, we're planning on being in the Kimball Jenkins building, and actually having some history of the Prescott Organ Company, and perhaps there'll be some other questions to be answered too. But he's going to play it, and that should be kind of fun. So I'm strongly encouraging you to come next month and enjoy that. We'll try to get the word out a little bit better for next month also. And please tell your friends and neighbors what's going on. We've also got other things planned for the rest of the year. We do this usually right through June, and we've taken sometime July and August off, and then we start right up again. So thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next month.